Dear viewers, in today's discussion, we are going to discuss Charles Dickens' famous novel Hard Times as a critique of utilitarianism and industrialism. Hard Times is a powerful critique of two major forces shaping 19th century England, utilitarianism and industrialism. The novel explores how these ideologies fail to nourish the emotional, moral, and imaginative aspects of human life. Through characters like Mr. Gradgrind, Bounderby, and Stephen Blackpool, and the bleak industrial setting of Coketown, Dickens exposes the dehumanizing effects of systems that prioritize productivity over compassion, creativity, and dignity. The philosophy of utilitarianism, developed by Jeremy Bentham, is grounded in the principle of the greatest happiness of the greatest number. It promotes the idea that human actions should be evaluated on the basis of their utility, the pleasure or pain they produce. Bentham's hedonic philosophy aimed to quantify morality through logical reasoning. While this approach championed efficiency, it failed to find favor with Dickens. He perceived it as spiritually hollow and morally inadequate, especially when applied to education and personal relationships. Dickens underscores this idea through the character of Thomas Gradgrind, who serves as a mouthpiece for utilitarian logic. In the opening chapter of the novel, he declares, "Now what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts." For Mr. Gradgrind, imagination and emotion have no place in education or life. He believes that facts alone form the foundation of a virtuous and successful existence. This rigid philosophy shapes the upbringing of his own children, Louisa and Tom, as well as the students at his school. He also raises Sissy Jupe, a circus girl abandoned by her father, in accordance with his strict factual utilitarian system. As they grow, Louisa and Tom become emotionally stunted and inwardly deformed. They struggle to find joy, meaning, or love in their lives. Louisa suffers in silence, whereas Tom resorts to manipulation. He encourages Louisa to marry Bounderby for gain and self-advancement. Persuaded by her father and brother, Louisa agrees to marry Bounderby. He is an older, bombastic manufacturer who proclaims to be a self-made man. Tom clings to Louisa for emotional support. Their monotonous lives take a new turn with the arrival of James Harthouse, a bored, wealthy gentleman from London. He is quickly attracted to Louisa, perceiving that she is living a loveless life with her husband. Harthouse pretends to befriend Tom in order to get closer to her. However, Louisa gives him a cold shoulder. Instead of eloping with him, she returns to her father's house. On the other hand, Bounderby's factory workers, known as hands, live under grueling conditions. Coketown, a fictitious industrial town, is aptly described in the following words: "A town of machinery and tall chimneys, out of which interminable serpents of smoke trailed themselves. Its workers are reduced to hands, a term that strips them of identity and humanity. The factories run like clockwork but leave alienation in their wake. Among them is Stephen Blackpool, a kind-hearted, wary worker whose life is made more miserable by a destructive marriage. Stephen loves a gentle woman named Rachel and wishes to be free to marry her, but the law and his poverty trap him in his existing marriage. When he appeals to Bounderby for help, he receives a cold and discouraging response. Dickens' critique acquires an even sharper edge when viewed through the lens of Marxist philosophy. The famous verdict of Karl Marx captures the capitalist and utilitarian overtones of the novel. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. Gradgrind's belief that consciousness can be shaped solely by facts has a Marxist tinge. The Gradgrind children are not born emotionally stunted. They become so under the rigid utilitarian regime. Similarly, the hands of Coketown endure grim lives, not by choice, but as a result of systemic economic oppression. Another powerful critique lies in the marriage between Bounderby and Louisa. Bounderby, a wealthy industrialist and self-proclaimed self-made man, represents the bourgeois class. His approach to marriage is purely transactional. He treats Louisa as a commodity. Louisa is raised to suppress her emotions, and she agrees to marry him out of duty, not affection. Her eventual breakdown and rejection of both Bounderby and her father's utilitarian philosophy marks a turning point. In a moment of emotional reckoning, she cries, "What have you done with the garden that should have bloomed once in this great wilderness?" This line poignantly captures her sense of alienation, not just from others, but from her own inner self. It is a cry against a system that suppresses natural human development in favor of cold rationalism. People like Stephen suffer silently. They feel alienated in a capitalist setup. Stephen's tragic death in a collapsing mine shaft delivers a symbolic blow to an industrial system that treats people as expendable tools. Before we conclude, a word about the modus operandi of capitalism. As Marxism tells us, capitalism thrives on exploiting its laborers. Laborers do not know how capitalism alienates them from themselves by seeing them in terms of production, as units, as objects rather than human beings. Capitalism turns people into things. It reifies them. However, this process of reification is not limited to laborers. The capitalist mode of production generates a profit-oriented view of the world in which ultimately all of us function as objects and become alienated from ourselves. In conclusion, Hard Times is Dickens' searing indictment of the ideologies that govern industrial capitalist society, particularly cold utilitarianism and dehumanizing capitalism. Through vivid characters and a stark setting, he reveals how material conditions shape human consciousness and how individuals feel alienated when they are denied emotional, imaginative, and moral nourishment. Dickens does not merely call for reform, he demands a deeper shift from calculation to compassion, from profit to passion, from facts to feeling, highlighting the need for a more humane and equitable society. Thank you very much.